Bon dia, everyone. My name is Stephanie Ickes, and I will be leading today's session on Snap Plus Core First. Are we doing all of this in English, or are you going to translate?
All
Okay.
in English, Stephanie.
Oh, we're
All
only
in
doing
English.
Ah.
Yeah, no problem.
Okay.
Sorry.
All right. So that'll make it a little easier for me. I don't know about the group, but so my name is Stephanie again, and I am a speech and language pathologist living in the United States. I work for Tobii Dynavox, and I am super excited to share with you the newest member of our family, Snap Plus Core First. And for those of you who are joining today, we just released this software this week, so it is brand new, and you are the first people to see it online. Just a little bit about me. I have been specializing in AAC for over 25 years, focusing on supporting children and adults with complex communication needs. So I've worked with babies. I've worked with people from birth to geriatric, and I've had a lot of experience working in the schools, working in rehab facilities, and now I work for a manufacturer. So the way today is going to go is we have some specific learning objectives for you. What we're going to do is we're going to spend time talking about how can we support engagement, literacy, and growth using core vocabulary. And the core vocabulary system that we're going to be using is, as I mentioned earlier, our new Snap Plus Core First. And I am super excited about this software because it was specifically designed to support AAC users in having more rich and complete conversations with other people while supporting their language and literacy development and helping them grow through the stages towards more complex communication. We're going to talk about the tools that are needed in order to be an effective and efficient communicator. And then I'm going to talk to you about some resources that you have available. And speaking of resources, if you look in the webinar panel, you'll see a place where it says handouts. If you expand that box, there are 4 handouts for you to download. I've provided you a copy of this presentation. I've provided you with 2 low-tech communication boards, and I've also provided you with a core book, which we'll talk about a little later. If you have any questions, you can type it into the chat window over in the control panel that you have. I have muted everyone, so if you have a question, you'll have to type it into the chat window. So let's first start talking about what is a core language strategy. When you hear someone speak of a core word language strategy, what we're talking about is creating a communication system that is made up of those most frequently used words in our language. These words are important because they can be used in flexible ways. There's a lot of research out there that says if you give individuals access to core vocabulary, they can use these in many combinations to say about 80% of everything they want to say. We're going to talk about how core works very well with a lot of other communication tools out there. So the examples that you see here, these buttons for I and go and more, these are examples of core vocabulary words. These are words we use many, many times every single day in different combinations. And we know, based on the research that's been around for years and years and years, that humans tend to use the same words over and over and over again, more than some other words. So we'll talk about how that's important for our AAC users and their language and literacy development, but also providing them with what they need in order to be effective communicators. So what is Core First? Core First is a set of pages that was designed specifically to support language and literacy development. Core First is made up of a bunch of different communication tools, things like topics and quickfires and keyboards, and we're going to go through all of these different tools. But what we know is when we provide AAC users with a collection of tools, it allows them to be a faster communicator as well as be able to communicate anything they want to communicate. So just again, Core First is a page set that lives in software called Snap. So that's what the Snap software plus Core First means. It's software and a page set designed for communication. One thing to know about Snap plus Core First is it comes on different platforms. So we have dedicated communication devices, meaning these were devices that were designed specifically for individuals who have severe speech and language disabilities. Snap plus Core First can also go on a tablet. It can go on a Windows tablet. It can go on an iPad, as well as our eye gaze systems. So if you're working with individuals who use eye gaze, maybe someone with Rett syndrome or someone with cerebral palsy, they can still have access to Snap plus Core First. So it really doesn't matter what platform you're using. There is a version of Snap plus Core First that can run on that hardware. Another thing about Snap plus Core First is we've created this ecosystem of different tools and resources to help you, parents and teachers and support staff, not only provide the communication, but also we've given you the tools you need to teach how to use the software. So we've provided many different pieces of support for you, both online and print materials that you can use to support the AAC user. So when I say print materials, I'm talking about lesson plans. I'm talking about printable books that you can use to teach the vocabulary. We'll talk a little more about that in just a bit. Another thing to know about Snap plus Core First is it is research-based. We spent a lot of time combing through the current research, not only research in AAC, but we also looked at linguistics research. We looked at developmental research. We looked at special education research. We wanted to make sure that we were doing the right things that we needed to do in the software and to support those best practices. So we looked at the research. We also spoke with a lot of professionals in the field of AAC and the field of special education. We talked to a lot of speech and language pathologists to make sure that we were creating a system that was easy to use and that supported all of the language things that we needed to teach. The other thing we did was we talked to a lot of clients, AAC users, we talked to their parents, and we talked to caregivers. Again, to make sure that we were creating a system that would support effective and efficient communication, not only for that AAC user, but for all of the people that were supporting them. When we started out building Snap plus Core First, we had some specific goals in mind. We wanted it to be easy, number one. We wanted it to be a piece of software that was easy to use, easy to figure out. We also wanted to create a system that was easy to navigate and never get lost. One of the things we hear from our customers a lot is, I get lost in the software and I don't know where I am. So what we wanted to do is provide some tools that allow you to easily move around in the software. So up in the top bar, and I'll demonstrate this in just a minute, up in the top bar, we have a back arrow, so you can always go back, just like you do on the internet. We also have a home button. This home button will always take you back to the core page. We consider, because the software is called Core First, we consider core to be the kind of the central place for the software. So the home button will always bring you back to core, but you can change what that home button is. So if you're working with an individual that you're just now introducing core, and maybe you want them to have access to a different page for their home page, you can do that. And then all the way over to the right, you see a little magnifying glass. This is a search feature. Another thing that we heard from our customers was, I can never find the words that I'm looking for. We now have a search feature that allows you to type in a word and the system will guide you to where that word is located. Another thing we did was we have a consistent toolbar. So with this toolbar, you are never more than one hit away from all of the tools that you need to communicate. Again, for those of you who have come in later, if you have any questions, please type them into the chat window. I have muted everyone, so you'll have to type your questions into the chat window. So I mentioned that we have these different tools that are available for communication. And we found that the research shows that a combination of different tools is the best way to create a robust and effective communication system. Excuse me. So we're going to look at each of these tools, and I'll do some demonstrations for you. So some of these tools are made to allow individuals to be fast, effective communicators. Other tools are created to allow individuals to use single words to compose novel or unique messages. So let's take a look at how all of this works together. Some of our other goals for Core First was we wanted individuals who use AAC to be engaged in conversations and engaged in the classroom and engaged in their world. The other thing that we wanted to focus on was literacy. We know that individuals who have significant speech and language disabilities, a high percentage, the researchers think about 90% of AAC users cannot read above a second grade level. So this tells me that we need to spend more time teaching individuals to read and write. And then the last thing we wanted to look at is, how do we help people grow to more complex communication? So we're going to look at each of these, and we're going to talk about the tools that allow you to support this. So the first one we're going to look at is engagement. So one of the tools that we provided for engagement is something called topics. And if you look in the toolbar here, it's outlined in red. The way that you get to topics is by selecting that button in your toolbar. And topics are those full phrases and full messages. They're fully programmed to allow an individual to participate in meaningful conversations based on the topic. And one of the things that I wanted to point out is there is a color coding system that we've used here. If you look at the top row, they're outlined in blue. These are questions related to the topic. The next two rows are outlined in orange. Those are general comments around that topic. The next row is outlined in green. These are positive comments about the topic. And then the last row there is outlined in red, and those are negative comments about the topic. What we wanted to do is to provide individuals with a variety of communicative functions. Many AAC users are stuck only using single words and nouns. We wanted to provide individuals the ability to learn how to ask questions. And then we wanted to also give them the ability to state their opinion, whether it's a negative opinion or a positive opinion. These were created to allow any individual, no matter what their communicative function is, to participate in a conversation. So let me give you a quick demonstration of that. Oops. Oh, let me show you the next slide first. One of the other things that we did for each of the topics is we provided behavior supports. We know that a lot of the individuals that we work with really rely on visual supports in order to understand what's happening around their world. We know that visual supports help support positive behavior. So for every topic you'll find in SNAP Plus Core First, you will also find behavior supports. So let's go look at the software. So what you're looking at is the SNAP Plus Core First software, and we are right now on the core page. But let's go into topics and look, take a closer look. So here we have some topics. Just so you know, we are interested in knowing what other topics might be of interest in Brazil. So keep that in mind. But here are some topics that we have. We've also provided empty buttons at the top for you to create your own topics. But let's go into the cooking topic to take a look. Here you notice I've got questions, general comments, positive comments, and negative comments about cooking. At the bottom of the page, we've also provided for you some empty buttons for you to fill in with specific things for the individual related to cooking. So notice, let me turn this up a little. So these are full messages that are programmed for an individual to be efficient and quick during this wonderful interaction during a cooking activity. Over to the right, you'll see the supports button, and you'll see this on every topic. When you go into supports, this is where you'll find your visual supports. We have a visual timer. So if there's an activity that a student isn't so motivated to do, you can set a timer and give them some visual feedback on how much longer they have to participate. We also have some first then tools here. So first we need to get the ingredients, and then we follow the recipe. All of these visual supports can be modified to meet the needs of the individual. You've got a mini schedule that tells someone what the process is. And I often recommend, before you start an activity, always go to the mini schedule to give them an idea of what they can expect in that activity. You have a script, and you have a social story. So we try to provide visual supports for every topic. So if I want to go back, I just select the back button and I'm back to my cooking topic. If I choose a different topic, let's say shopping, same strategy: questions, general comments, positive comments, negative comments, and I've got my visual supports specific to shopping. One other thing I wanted to point out, sometimes when I'm shopping, I need access to specific words to shopping. So that's what the related lists button does for you. Okay. Earlier, I mentioned this search feature. I want to show you how this works. So one of the things that customer said, I can never find the words I'm looking for. So what you do is you go to the search button, you type in your word, and it shows you, sometimes you'll get multiple entries, but what you do is you select the item that you want. And if you notice, SNAP plus Core First is outlining the path to get to that word. So I just follow the path and it shows me where that word is. So that, you know, the search feature, the home button that always takes me back to Core, and the toolbar are those things that are going to help you navigate more effectively in the system. The next goal that we had for SNAP plus Core First is literacy. And when we talk about literacy, we're basically talking about an individual's ability to read and write. Now, I will say that reading and writing is a wide spectrum. We have some people who are completely and fully literate, can use a keyboard to spell everything they want to say. We have some individuals who can read some words, and then we have other individuals who are just starting. Maybe they just like to listen to a story being told, or they can recognize their name when it's written on the wall in the classroom. So there's a wide range of reading and writing. Our goal as therapists, teachers, and parents is to move that individual to the highest level of communication ability possible. When we're talking about literacy, we also know that literacy is closely tied to language. So when you are supporting the language development of an individual, you cannot support language without also supporting literacy. And you will find when you do support the literacy development, their language will improve because the two are so tied together. The important thing about literacy is when an AAC user is literate, they are able to say anything they want to say. And truly, that's our ultimate goal, right? We want our AAC users to be able to say whatever they want to say. And I already mentioned that we think around 80 to 90% of people in the US who use AAC can't read above a second grade level. To me, that is horrible. And that tells me that we need to support literacy like we haven't before. And it's interesting when I'm working with teams out in the world, it's almost as though literacy never even crossed their mind. But for typically developing children, that's of utmost importance. And I want us, for our students in special education, I want us to put literacy at the top of the priority list. So for many of the individuals that we're working with, we would consider them to be at an emergent level. And what this means is that, these guys are at a very early level of literacy development. Our goal is for them to move to conventional literacy. And so there's a process that we can go through to support literacy. And one of the easiest things for us to do for our kids and even some of our adults who never got the opportunity to learn to read, the best thing we can do is read books and use their AAC system to show them where those words are. The great thing about core vocabulary strategies on AAC system is the same core we're using to communicate is the same core we need to learn to read and write. And we often use this diagram to show how communicating and listening and reading and writing are all tied together, and there is no hierarchy of how we teach it. It all comes together. So what we did with Core First is we provided those high frequency words. And this is based on a lot of research. This is based on research that tells us what are the most common words in our language. This is also based on some rather recent research that was done by Karen Erickson at the University of North Carolina, Chapel Hill. She did a study to find out what core words are necessary for both communication and participation in the classroom. So that's where this comes from. The way you get to core is you either touch your home button or you select the core button in the toolbar. Core is a consistent set of words that can be used repetitiously throughout the day. They are not specific to any category. So if I look at the word more or mice, I can use that to say more cookies, more hugs, more swinging, more music. So it doesn't really matter what the situation is. I can use that word in a very powerful way. I can combine that word with no more music, no more cookie, no more swing. So by combining these words, I'm able to communicate in a very powerful way. You can't talk about core without talking about word lists. Word lists and core work together in order to create meaningful and powerful messages. So let's talk about, let's take a look at this. I'm going to go back to the software, and right now I'm on the core page. Now I haven't downloaded the newest version. This is the version that I have. So some of the verbs might be a little off, but you'll get the point here. So I can say, duh. And then I go to my word list, which is right here in the upper right corner. And I can choose a category. Okay, so core and word lists work together. Let's take a closer look at word lists. Word lists are single words that are organized by category. So you can see that I have a lot of different categories. Got animals, weather, clothing. So with core and word lists, I'm able to put together meaningful messages. So it looks as though I'm going to pause for a moment and see if there are any questions. And Raphael, some of them, one of them is, oh, I think you answered it. That's okay. So one of the questions, yeah, I think I'm okay. How do you work with colors like the Fitzgerald key and keep coherent? So that's a great question. Raphael, you want to, you want to mute?
Hi, Stephanie.
Yeah.
You need any help?
I think I'm good. They were kind enough to write them in English, the questions that I see here. So I think we're good.
Okay.
Yeah, I'm good. So the first question was, how do you work with colors like the Fitzgerald key and keep coherence? That's a really, really good question, and we get asked that quite a bit. So one of the things that that we did was we actually looked way back in the 60s at the research about the Fitzgerald key. And we actually found that the Fitzgerald key doesn't use a color coding strategy, but color coding is widely used in the field of AAC. So what we did was we did use a color coding strategy. One of the things that I say to people, if you are using a different color coding strategy, you can easily change the colors of the buttons in Snap plus Core First. So that's one thing. If you have an individual who is used to another color coding strategy, you can absolutely change, and it's quite easy to change the colors within Snap plus Core First. And if I have some time at the end, I'll do a couple of examples of how you can modify buttons. So as you can see here, our questions are blue, people and pronouns are yellow, and you know, when you look at the pronouns here, you'll see a plus sign. That means we're giving you more questions and more people and pronouns. All of those buttons stay consistent yellow when you go to that page. So that's how that color coding strategy works. I hope that answers your question. If not, give me a little more detail and I'll try to do a better job. Somebody asked, is the Portuguese version already available? Yes, it is already available. And at the end of the webinar, I will provide you with some links for how you can get more information on how to get that. Is it possible to use only a word board with the app? Adults with ALS, for instance, use only alphabet and it's not fast and efficient enough. Yeah, great question. We actually have within Tobii Dynavox, this might be a question, Raphael, that you follow up with. We actually have page sets that were developed for individuals with ALS. Keep in mind, Snap plus Core First was made for symbol users. So these are people who aren't reading yet. So Snap plus Core First probably isn't going to be the most effective strategy to use for an adult who's literate. So I would suggest that you look at some of the other page sets and some of the other solutions we have specifically for ALS. Can you use sentences without pictures? Absolutely. You can take all the symbols off. You can have symbols go to the message window or turn that off. So yeah, you can modify things. Okay. So the next thing I want to do, and I'm not sure how well this will come over on the webinar, but we'll try.
I'm watching. Read this one.
So what I want to show you, can you still see my screen?
Yes.
Okay, good.
Perfect.
Okay, good. What I want to show you is a little video of a little girl named Danica. And Danica has apraxia of speech. And you'll be able to hear her speech and how it's not very clear and she has some articulation issues. So that's why she's using Snap plus Core First. But I love this video because they're reading a book together and Danica is using her core and word lists in order to participate in reading the book. So let's take a look.
You. Oh, I like how you posed that. Good job. You.
I also want to point out, if you look on her screen, you'll see that some buttons are hidden. I'm going to talk a little bit about this later. You can actually go in and hide buttons that hide buttons and gradually introduce them as you're teaching the language. So we'll talk a little more about that in just a bit.
Like red.
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 You like red.
You like red too. You're wearing red.
Shoes. You're right.
Shoes, purse.
What's this?
Hands.
Good
I like how you put
I also love how they're not just reading the book, they're talking about the picture, and she's getting to practice and learn more vocabulary. So that's something important to think about as you're supporting this language and literacy. Don't just read the book. Talk about what you see in the picture. Work on, let kids talk about background knowledge, things that they already know, and teach them things that they may not know about.
an N sound on that word, hat. Let's keep going. And I.
Oh, you cleared it? Wonderful. That was great.
I like colors.
That's right. Blue starts with B. I heard you making that sound.
Nice. You're right. Awesome.
So that's just a quick little video of how core and word lists work together, and just a really good example of how we can use those books in a really engaging way to support that language and literacy. All right, the next thing that we wanted to address with SNAP plus Core First is growth. We know that individuals who use AAC, it's a wide range of people. We wanted people to be able to start with one button and move all the way up to 80 buttons. And we wanted to make sure that we organized the vocabulary so that as you grew, your vocabulary stayed in a relative position. So you didn't have to learn it over and over and over again. So with SNAP plus Core First, there's two ways you can grow. Like Danica, what they did was they started with a grid that was filled in, and they hid all of the buttons that she needed to learn, and they gradually introduced that vocabulary over time. This feature works really well for individuals who don't have any vision or access issues, right? They can touch small buttons, they can see small buttons. We're just simplifying the screen by hiding buttons and gradually introducing them. One of the things that we've also done is we've provided some resources that give you pretty much a list of what order should you introduce the words, and I'll show you that in just a minute. The other way that you can grow is you can start with large buttons and grow by making the buttons smaller over time. So this might be a good strategy for an individual who is practicing their access method. So if you're working with an eye gaze user and they're still learning how to use eye gaze, they may need to use big buttons at first. But as their eye gaze gets better, when they practice, they can gradually get to smaller and smaller buttons. So let me show you how that works. All right, so with SNAP plus Core First, in the upper right-hand corner, you'll see a little gear. That gear gets you into the programming or the edit mode. And if you look towards the bottom, you've got some buttons down here. In order to to do certain things, you're going to use the tools that are down here. So let's say I've decided that this is the place where I want to end with my AAC user, but this is way too many buttons to start out with. And maybe I just want to start out with I, you, it, want, and more. So what I can do is I select a button, and I know it's selected because it's got that little check mark in the upper left corner. Then I'm going to select multi-select in the menu. Let's shrink this menu down a little bit. Then I can go, when I've selected multi-select, I can go in and select all of the questions and say hide. And I can go in and select, you know, whatever I want, and then select, oops, I did that wrong. Oh, no, now I'll hide it. When I go out, notice that all of those buttons have been hidden. The great thing about this is I don't have to reprogram them. When I'm ready to introduce a new word to a student, I just go back into edit mode. Let's say we're going to start talking about who. I select that one and I select show, and then I'm done. So within a few seconds, I can reveal vocabulary as I'm ready to start teaching it. So that's one way that I can grow. I start out with however many buttons I want to end with, and then I go in and hide. The other way that I can grow is by going into page set and then going to grid size. So you'll notice here, I can go from one button all the way to 80 buttons. Okay. So if I have an individual who is a very early level, maybe I start with 3 by 3. And because I've hidden things in the other, all of the vocabulary just moves fluidly throughout the grid sizes. So if you've hidden one in one grid size, it might be hidden in another. So I'm just going to unhide that. Okay. Okay. So I can really simplify the communication page and allow them to grow. One thing I wanted to point out, quiero, gusto, mais, and no. See how they're all together in this chunk. If I go into page set and I go up a grid size, notice that those words stay together. We try to only introduce vocabulary in a row or a column. We try to keep vocabulary in relative position so that every time a person grows, they don't have to learn the location of what where the vocabulary is. And I can say that we are the only manufacturer out there who considered that relative position concept, because we've seen individuals really struggle with growing over time because they have to learn it every single time they grow. And what we have found is that the caregivers and the teachers and the therapists, they don't encourage the growth because it's so hard for them to learn something new. Let's just stay where we are. So we really wanted to encourage people to grow over time. One of the things that the research tells us too is it doesn't really, for young children, it doesn't matter which strategy you use, but I will say that it is very dependent on their vision and their access method. Okay. Let's see if there are any other questions. Let's see. No more questions. Okay. Another goal that we had for SNAP Plus Core First is we wanted to provide you with lesson plans and books and materials that you could use to teach the language. And so what you see here is an example of one of the core books that we have. We provide you with we will be providing you with books that match the core vocabulary with lesson plans that will help you teach that information. So let me just give you a quick example of what that looks like. This is actually the book that I've included with the handouts. So if you haven't downloaded the handouts, make sure you look over in the control panel and expand the handout section and download this. So I've provided for you a handout that gives you an example of one of the core books. So this one is focusing on want. And we use these books to provide students with engaging activities and a way to start using their AAC system. I love these books too because you can print them out for you teachers. For the teachers, you can print them out and send them home so mom and dad can be involved in the learning process. So this is one of your handouts. I've also provided for you a couple of just low-tech paper boards that you can print out and use with the book and start to use these things with your students. Another thing that we are working on for you is something called pathways. And when it's ready, we will provide it to you. It is already available on the English Toby Dynavox site. So if you go to tobydynavox.com and you go to Learn and then Pathways. Pathways for Core First is a free system that gives caregivers, teachers, and parents materials and videos and ideas on how to implement SNAP Plus Core First. So what you're going to do is you're going to scroll down to Pathways for Core First Lite, and then this is what it looks like. So we are in the process, hopefully before the end of the year, we will be releasing Pathways for Core First in Brazil for Portuguese. But what it does is it gives you some explicit instructions for how to introduce SNAP Plus Core First. So there are some really nice videos. Here's an introduction to Core First video. It gives you a pretty step-by-step instructions for how to set up the device, how to try the device with the individual. It has a great section on communication partner skills. It also has a section on lesson plans. We give you 5 days worth of lesson plans and materials for lots and lots of activities. So I'll just give you an example. Here's a lesson plan for playing with blocks. And we give you 5 days of lessons to use for playing with blocks. So each, there's a letter that goes home to the parents, which I love. It teaches you how to find the vocabulary and how to use it and model it for the individual. So there's just a great collection of materials here. Let's see, I'm going to try, I want to show you one other thing. Let's see. So this section here teaches you actually how to modify the vocabulary, which I'm gonna give you some examples here. So here's a video on how to customize. So Pathways is just a great online tool that you can use. Now, let me say it one more time. This is for parents, teachers, and therapists, and anyone who's supporting the individual. This is kind of your guide for how to teach the individual to use SNAP Plus Core First. Okay. So I want to go back really quickly. I'm going to go up a level in my grid size. And I want to just show you how easy it is to modify buttons here. So really quickly, I'm going to go in and I'm going to reveal all the vocabulary that I hid. So this is how easy it is. And I just say show. Okay. We've provided lots of places for you to program your own words. So for example, in topics, I mentioned that we provided you with a row of buttons for you to modify. One place that I didn't go into was quickfires. Quickfires are those quick messages that aren't related to any specific topic that allow me to engage in conversations. So these are just some general quickfires. We've got greetings. We've got personal needs, feelings, questions, communication repairs. And you'll see that on a lot of these pages, there are empty buttons. Those are there for you to program. But we also have this place for you to program communication messages that are important to that individual. So let me show you how easy it is to program. Now I'm going to program in English. So you go into edit mode, you select the button you want to program, you give it a label. The label is the word that appears on the button. You can go in and search for a picture, or you can use photographs that you have. So I'll go to my photo library and I'll pick a picture of my dog. And my message is, I have a dog named Maddox. And then that is it. It's very quick and easy to program. Doesn't sound right because I don't have English speech engine, but you get the gist. It's very, very easy to edit buttons. So it looks like I have some questions. Let me see. Oh, this is a great question. Can we create our own book? It's a paper book or an app. It's actually a paper book. So absolutely, Helena, you can create your own books. And I actually recommend that you do, because that allows you to create customized books that are motivating for the individual. So if you're teaching the word want, you can put I want and the things that that individual really likes. So I love the idea of creating your own books. And can we use the books like in Snapseed? Absolutely. Take advantage of books that you have on your shelves in your classrooms. Create your own books in PowerPoint, whatever you do. As I mentioned earlier, the best thing you can do is read books to support that language and literacy. Great questions. So that is the end. We have some time for additional questions. If anyone has any additional questions, please type them in the message window.
Perguntas e respostas. Se vocês tiverem algumas perguntas, quem quiser perguntar também em português, nós iremos traduzir para a Stephanie, tá? Fiquem à vontade. Na barra do painel, do webinar, tem um botãozinho chamado Questions. Vocês podem escrever lá e nós traduzimos aqui agora, tá? Eu vou deixar alguns segundos disponíveis para vocês escreverem. Ninguém mais? Ok. Ok, Stephanie.
Was everyone able to download the handouts?
Yeah.
Okay, good. All right. Well, if there are no other questions, I guess we can end today's session. Thank you, everyone. Obrigada.
Yeah.
I get to practice my Portuguese a little bit.
Thank you, Stephanie.
Thank you, Rafael. Thanks for your help.
Thank you.
Bye-bye.
Tchau, tchau, pessoal. Muito obrigado, né? Nós teremos alguns outros eventos online como esses já pré-agendados. Na próxima semana vocês receberão um e-mail com a agenda, com mais informações e nós faremos um outro link com esse material para download, inclusive com a apresentação para quem não conseguiu baixar hoje. Tá? Uma outra tentativa é de deixar a apresentação disponível para a gente assistir futuramente, talvez no YouTube ou em algum outro canal. E sempre que nós tivermos esses materiais, nós enviaremos via e-mail, postaremos lá no Instagram, @tobibrasil, e nos canais de comunicação das redes sociais da CVM. Tudo bem? Eu agradeço muito, nós agradecemos e contamos com vocês na próxima apresentação. Um abraço.